It's not just a home. It's a feeling. It's not just a roof over your head. It's a promise of safety. It's not just food on the table. It's a show of love. But what happens when that love is taken away and replaced with a price tag? I was calmly cutting vegetables in their kitchen when my daughter-in-law, Maria, said it. Her words hit me like a slap. You're not even contributing. Why should we keep feeding you? At first, I thought I had heard her wrong. I paused and looked at her, but she didn't even blink. Her face was serious. She truly meant what she said. I then looked at my son, Daniel, hoping he would say something. But he just sat there, looking at his phone, as if he hadn't heard anything. I asked him, "Daniel, did you hear that?" He looked up for a moment, then went back to his phone. "Mom, we've talked about this. Groceries are expensive. You've been here for 2 months. It's starting to feel like you're not trying." I just stood there, holding the knife in my hand, confused. I cook for them, clean the house, do laundry, and even pick up my granddaughter Ava from daycare. I have always been helping them in every way I can. But Daniel didn't care about any of this. "None of that pays the bills," he said. Maria was putting the trash in a bag. "We're not trying to be mean," she added, "but this isn't working anymore. We can't afford an extra person. It's not personal. It's just about survival." I was shocked to hear the word survival from these two. I cook for them every night, wash their dishes, and even pay for the food with my own money. "You want me to leave?" I said, "Just because of food?" Maria didn't even look at me. "We thought maybe your sister could take you in, or you could go to a senior living home. You would have more space there anyway." They both knew my sister had died years ago. Daniel stood up and let out a sigh as if he was the one who had been treated badly. "Look, Mom, you taught me to be practical. The rent is high, daycare costs a lot, and everything is so expensive. This is just not working out." I looked at him and remembered all the things I did for him. I worked 2 jobs to buy him books for school. I skipped my own dinner so he could have a nice Christmas gift. I took out $18,000 from my retirement fund to help with their wedding and moving costs. And now I was a burden because of a grocery bill. I saw my suitcase already packed and sitting by the door, just waiting for me to leave. Maria glanced at her watch and said, "We'll call you a cab. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet." I looked around the kitchen. The groceries I bought were still in the fridge, and the dish I made was still on the counter. But I didn't cry. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. As I was leaving, I said, "I helped pay the rent on this place for a year, so you two could stay here." Maria rolled her eyes. "We're grateful, but that doesn't mean you get to stay forever." I just nodded and walked out. There were no hugs, no goodbyes, just the sound of the door locking behind me. What they didn't know was that earlier that day, I had received a call from a lawyer. My late brother had left me all of his things, including a big building with 4 apartments that was already paid for. It was in a busy part of the city. I hadn't told them because I wanted to see how they would treat me when they thought I had nothing. Now I had my answer. The cab dropped me off at a cheap motel near the train station. I sat on the curb for 15 minutes, holding my suitcase like it was the only thing I had left. The ride had been quiet. I didn't say a word to the driver. My mind kept going back to one thing: food. That was the final reason for them to kick me out. Not the years I spent raising Daniel alone. Not the fact that I paid for half their furniture or their wedding debt. It was a bag of groceries. That's all it took to make them forget 3 decades of my love and sacrifice. I remembered the first time Daniel got sick as a child with a high fever. I was on the phone with the doctor, stirring soup with one hand and holding him with the other. I remembered missing every birthday party for 5 years because I worked the night shift. I remembered selling my mother's jewelry when his car broke down in college, so he could go to his internships. When Maria lost her job, who paid their bills? I did. I quietly sent them money and let them think Daniel got a bonus. And when Ava was born, who stayed up with the baby so they could rest, who filled their freezer with my homemade meals. But now, none of that mattered because I hadn't paid for the groceries last week. The motel room was small, with 2 lamps and one window. The shower sounded like it was about to fall apart. I didn't unpack. I just sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my phone. My sister had texted me that morning. "You want the key or not?" We had a secret code. Our dad had told us about a 4-apartment building he bought many years ago. It wasn't in his will. He left it for both of us. She had been taking care of it since he died. I never thought I would need it, but now I saw it as a second chance. I called her and said I was ready to take it over. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just gave me the address and said, "It's yours too. Do what you want with it." I didn't cry. I just sat in that motel room and stared at the wall. They didn't just kick me out because of food. They showed me exactly where I stood in their lives. It wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. The next morning, I woke up in that small motel room with a sore neck and a heavy heart. There was a half-empty coffee cup on the table, and my phone was buzzing. It was a message from my sister. Heard what happened. Ready to talk. I called her right away. We hadn't talked much since Dad passed, but this was different. When she picked up, she didn't say hello. She just asked, "So you still want that key?" That was our secret. Years ago, before Dad got sick, he gave each of us a key and said, "This building is not in my will. It's for you both. Don't tell anyone." The building was old then, a tired 4-unit building on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. But Dad held on to it, saying it was just in case everything else goes to hell. I had almost forgotten about it, but my sister hadn't. She had been paying the taxes and bills every year, keeping it ready. "It's empty now," she said. "I checked last week. Not a single tenant. You can move in if you want, or do what you want with it. It's yours too." I thanked her and promised to go look at it. That afternoon, I drove to the building in a borrowed car. It was old but strong, with red bricks and all 4 apartments in good shape. I stood in front of it for a minute before unlocking the gate. The front door opened easily. There were no unwanted people inside, just dust and quiet. I walked through each apartment one by one. 2 bedrooms, each decent kitchens, and a private laundry room. Everything needed to be fixed, but the structure was strong. I ran my hand along the railing on the stairs and thought, this could work. More than that, this could change everything. I spent the next few days with a notebook, writing down what needed to be fixed and getting in touch with builders. I didn't tell anyone, not my sister, not my friends, and definitely not Daniel. It felt good to have something that was mine, untouched by their expectations or opinions. I knew I was staying when I opened a closet and found a stack of my dad's old notebooks. Inside, in his handwriting, were lists of repairs he had made, rent he had collected, and even drawings for future changes. He had built this place with his own hands, a side job that became my security. He never talked about it. He just waited quietly and carefully. I ran my hand over the old wood cabinet and whispered, "Thanks, Dad." He was never one for many words, but this was his way of saying he would always have my back. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. What I felt wasn't sadness. It was a fire starting inside me. I had a home, I had power, and soon I would have tenants. The building didn't look like much yet, but it was mine. I spent the next few weeks cleaning, fixing walls, hiring painters, and scrubbing every part of those apartments until they smelled fresh and new. I had no plan, just a list of things to do and a strong will. I moved into apartment 3 because it had the best light. I didn't tell anyone, not my sister, not my friends, and definitely not Daniel. It felt good to have my own space, free from their judgment. While the workers were there during the day, I would sit at the dining table and make notes. New cabinets, check. Fix the hallway heater, call Jerry. Post rental listings, not yet. I wanted everything to be perfect. By October, I had 3 fully renovated, clean, and bright apartments for rent. They were simple, but everything worked. I listed them without my name, using an older property manager named Teresa, who never asked questions. She posted the listings online, handled the calls, and set up tours. I told her I would check the applications quietly from the background, and she agreed. It was only 3 days later when I got an email. We've got a new application for apartment 1. A couple with a young daughter. Both have jobs. Names, Daniel and Maria Carson. I stared at the screen for so long that my laptop screen turned dark. Teresa had no idea who they were. She sent it to me like it was just another file. I clicked on their application and read every word. Daniel's signature, Maria's job information, Ava's name. There was even a note. We love the neighborhood. Looking to start fresh after a rough few months. We're quiet, responsible, and looking for a stable place to raise our daughter. I almost laughed. Start fresh? After pushing me out over frozen peas and bread, I called Teresa. Set up a showing. I said, I'll come as your assistant. Don't tell them who I am. She was unsure. Are you sure? I said, very. On the day of the showing, I wore a simple sweater and tied my hair back. Teresa introduced me as Marcy, my colleague. They didn't recognize me at first. Daniel looked thinner. Maria wore sunglasses inside. Ava was holding a stuffed rabbit and looking around as if they had moved many times this year. It's small, Maria said, but cleaner than the last place. Daniel pointed to the kitchen. No mold under the sink. The last two had black rot. Teresa smiled. No mold. The owner just fixed everything. New pipes, new floors. Then Maria said something that almost made me drop my notepad. Does the landlord live here? Because the last one was always watching us. Teresa tilted her head toward me. She doesn't, but Marcy here helps out. Maria looked at me quickly. Well, as long as no one bothers us, we're happy. We've had enough trouble from family lately. I didn't even blink. You'll find this building is very peaceful, I said, and the walls are thick. Ava ran into one of the bedrooms and shouted, This one's mine. Daniel followed her, talking about the low rent and finally having a space of their own. Then I saw it. Maria took a granola bar out of her bag. It was the same brand I used to keep in my kitchen when I lived with them. She threw the wrapper into the trash as if it meant nothing. Teresa turned to me and whispered, Are you sure you want to rent to them? I kept my eyes on them. Let's wait and see how they handle the process. As we were leaving, Maria called over her shoulder, We'll take it if the lease is fair. Just don't raise the rent in 6 months. Daniel added, We're not looking for trouble, just stability. I nodded once. Of course. They left, holding hands, with Ava skipping behind them, not knowing they had just applied to live in a building I owned. I walked back up to my apartment, locked the door, and sat in my quiet kitchen with my hands folded. They wanted stability. I was about to give it to them, for a price. The official process was just a formality. Their credit was okay, their job history was stable, and Teresa had already checked their past. But I wasn't interested in their paperwork. I wanted to see how they would act when they didn't know they were being watched. Teresa invited them back for what she called a final interview, just to go over the lease terms. They arrived early. Ava wore the same pink jacket I had bought her 2 Christmases ago. Maria had on a lot of makeup, and her shoes were too fancy for a casual meeting. Daniel wore a tired dress shirt tucked sloppily into his jeans. He looked like someone trying to make a good impression, but was too worn out to succeed. Teresa had the lease open on the coffee table in apartment 2. I stood nearby, pretending to look at tenant files. Maria looked around and said, The finishes are nice for this area. You'd never guess the outside looks so. She stopped and made a face. Daniel quickly said, It's a good price, better than most. And honestly, as long as the owner isn't weird, we're happy. I turned to Teresa and asked loudly enough for them to hear, Did we finalize the rent increase structure yet? Teresa replied calmly, 3% annually, 5% if property taxes go up. Maria's head snapped around. You're raising rent every year? Teresa nodded. It's in the lease terms. Everything is clear. Daniel sighed. Great. Just our luck. But honestly, it still beats living with family. At least here, we don't have to be careful. I stared at him. He said it so easily, as if they hadn't thrown me out of my own life. Maria added, We were doing someone a favor, and somehow we ended up the bad guys. It's always like that. People move in, eat your food, and suddenly think they're owed everything. Teresa looked at me. She knew I hadn't told her the full story, but she had guessed enough from their names. I could see it in her eyes. She let me speak. And do you see yourselves living here long term? I asked. Maria spoke first. It depends. We're not looking to move around, but it all depends on how nice the environment is. She looked me straight in the face when she said it. My hand stayed still. You'll find this place very nice, I said. The landlord values respect above all. Daniel nodded, flipping to the signature page. We just want to move on, honestly. It's been a rough year. People taking advantage of us. Always someone mooching off us. No one respects boundaries anymore. I couldn't stop myself. Must be tiring, I said. Maria scoffed. Tell me about it. Teresa cleared her throat. So, the last step is the first and last month's rent, and then you're all set to move in by the first of next month. Perfect, Daniel said, standing up. Finally, something feels like it's going right. I stood too. I'll make sure the place is spotless. Wouldn't want anything to ruin that fresh start. Maria turned to Teresa and asked, We'll be dealing with you directly, right? Not her. Teresa glanced at me. No worries. Marcy just helps on the renovation and tenant screening side. Maria nodded slowly, still looking at me. Good. Nothing personal. It's just that we've had bad experiences with people like housekeepers getting involved in management. Boundaries get messy. That was it. The moment. A quiet, proud insult disguised as small talk. I looked right at her. Don't worry, boundaries are my specialty. They signed the lease, paid the deposit, and shook hands with Teresa as if they had won something. Then they left, not knowing, holding Ava's hand, and already planning how they would arrange the furniture. I waited until their car drove away, then turned to Teresa. Still think I should rent to them? She thought for a moment. No, but I also think you know exactly what you're doing. I nodded. They wanted to be independent. I was about to give them a taste of it. I wasn't going to kick them out right away. That would have been too easy. I wanted them to live under my roof, to pay me month after month without knowing. I wanted them to feel in control, only to realize slowly and painfully that the control was never theirs to begin with. They moved in on a Saturday afternoon with 3 different suitcases, an old coffee table, and a bad attitude. Maria was shouting orders from the curb, and Daniel was carrying boxes as if his back was already hurting. Ava ran up the stairs happily. She waved at me through the window of apartment 3 without knowing who I was. I just nodded and looked away. Watching them settle in was strange. They unpacked dishes. I bought them 2 Christmases ago, hung a picture I had helped Maria pick out, and placed their old couch, the same one I helped them clean after Ava spilled juice on it, against the far wall. They were trying to create a stable home. They had no idea it was all sitting on my floorboards. For the first few weeks, things were quiet. The rent was on time, with no complaints. I saw them sometimes in the hallway or on the porch. Maria would nod politely. Daniel would avoid eye contact. They still didn't recognize me. I had dyed my hair darker and started wearing glasses. But I think deep down, he just didn't want to see me. It was easier to pretend I didn't exist than to face what he had done. Then, November's rent was 3 days late. Teresa texted me, "Do we add a late fee or give them a pass?" I told her to add the fee. Maria emailed the next day. There must be some mistake. Our bank shows the transfer on the 2nd. Teresa sent her the time-stamped log. Payment posted on the 5th. That's 3 days late. Maria didn't respond. December came, and with it, another delay. This time, 5 days. Another late fee. Then came a complaint. The apartment upstairs makes noise late at night. Daniel wrote, "Whoever lives up there walks like an elephant." Teresa passed the message to me. I read it and laughed. I was walking around in that apartment barefoot. They were hearing me. I decided to walk a little heavier, just enough to make them notice. Maria knocked on my door one morning, not expecting anyone to answer. When I opened it, She stopped. Oh, I thought, never mind. You needed something? I asked. She looked at me, confused. Do you live here? I do, I said. I've been here for a while. I didn't know. Sorry if we've been noisy. Not at all. She stood there for a moment as if she was trying to figure something out, but she couldn't. Then she mumbled something and walked off. In January, I raised the rent by 8%. It was still within my legal rights, just high enough to hurt. Teresa sent out notices to all tenants. Maria emailed again, this time angrier. We just moved in. Isn't this unfair? Teresa replied, rent increases were explained in the signed lease. The owner approved the change. Maria replied, once more, with a bad attitude. Tell the owner to enjoy taking advantage of people. I almost sent a message back myself. Instead, I told Teresa to start checking on rent payments with stricter reminders. In February, they were late again. By now, I knew the signs. Daniel pacing outside on his phone, Maria calling her mother, them skipping takeout nights, and buying groceries in smaller bags. They were struggling, and I was watching, notepad in hand. But what really got to me wasn't just the money. It was the change in their tone. In the hallway, one day, Maria walked past me with Ava and didn't even say hello. She just said to her daughter, loud enough for me to hear, some people really don't know when to move out of the way. I smiled. I wasn't in their way. I was above them, both literally and financially. They paid me to live there. I was their landlord. They still hadn't figured it out, but they would soon. It was mid-March when the final rent check bounced. No warning, no apology, just a rejection notice from the bank and silence from them. Teresa followed the rules and sent them the usual 3-day notice to pay or leave. They didn't respond. Instead, Daniel showed up at her office without a notice, with Ava in tow, looking tired and desperate. He tried to argue that it must have been a bank error, that their payment always went through, that they were perfect tenants. Teresa didn't argue. She handed him a printed list of their late payments, fees, and the bounce check. If you can fix it by Friday, we won't take it further, she said. If not, the owner has approved the process to kick you out. He left without saying anything else. That Friday came and went. No payment, no communication, just a long voicemail from Maria on Teresa's phone saying they were having money problems and needed the owner to be more understanding. I listened to the message 3 times. Then I told Teresa to go ahead and post the notice and file the paperwork. March 21st, 7:42 a.m. I walked down to apartment 1 and taped the eviction notice right on their door myself. I stood there for a moment, enjoying the quiet, then walked back upstairs and watched from my window. 2 hours later, Maria opened the door and screamed. She ripped the paper down and stormed outside in her bathrobe, dialing her phone with one hand and pulling Ava inside with the other. I waited 2 minutes, and then Teresa called me. They're demanding a face-to-face meeting. They're threatening to sue, saying the eviction is a punishment. Good, I said. Tell them I'll meet them tomorrow here, at noon. I spent that night ironing my clothes and printing a new copy of the lease with every important part highlighted in yellow. Noon came, and I let them into the building as if it were just another meeting. They walked into my apartment, the one upstairs looking confused. Maria looked around. I thought we were meeting the property manager. No, I said, standing by the window. You're meeting the owner. It took them a moment. Daniel's jaw moved, but no words came out. Maria looked from me to the lease papers on the table and back to me. Wait, what? I own the building, I said. I have for months. My father left it to me. You've been paying me rent this entire time. Maria blinked fast. This is a joke. No, I said calmly. The joke was when you kicked me out of your home because I ate 2 extra eggs in a week. The funny part is that I now have legal control over the roof over your head. Daniel finally found his voice. You tricked us. You applied, I approved. You signed, I collected. What part of that is a trick? You let us move in here, knowing, Maria snapped. Knowing exactly who you were, yes, I said, and I gave you exactly what you said you wanted. Independence, responsibility, and now consequences. Maria stood there, frozen. Ava peeked around her leg, not understanding any of it, clutching the same stuffed bunny she always carried. Daniel started to beg. Mom, please. We have a kid. We're struggling. We made mistakes. Okay, but don't do this. Don't throw us out. You threw me out, I said, and now the score is settled. I'm doing this to set a boundary. You had no problem kicking me out when I was weak. Now I'm strong, and I'm done being used. Daniel stepped forward, his voice breaking. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said. You can leave on your own or wait for the court date. Your choice. But either way, you're leaving. Maria stared at me, her mouth open as if she wanted to throw something, but there was nothing left to say. The power was now mine. They turned and walked out without another word. The eviction notice was still in Maria's hand. The door closed. Silence. I stood in the middle of my living room and took a deep breath. I hadn't just kicked them out of my property. I had kicked them out of the place in my life where guilt used to live. And it felt like the end of a long journey. They were gone by the end of the month. They left behind a broken microwave, a loose drawer, and a trash bag they didn't bother to tie shut. I hired a cleaning crew, changed the locks, and never looked back. No drama, no apology, just silence. Exactly what I wanted. Teresa handled everything professionally and never mentioned their names again. I think she understood that this wasn't just business. It was about finding closure. I didn't celebrate. I didn't brag. I just got up the next morning, made a cup of coffee in my own kitchen, and sat by the window in peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something bad to happen. No one was asking for money. No one was looking at me like I was a burden. The apartment was mine. The quiet was mine. My decisions were finally mine. I kept the building and rented the other 2 apartments to a retired teacher and a single mother with a new baby. Both of them paid on time. Both of them said good morning in the hall. That was all I needed. No drama, just decency. Some nights, I would sit on the front steps with a book and think about everything I used to deal with. The guilt, the mean comments, the cold dinners, all of it because of what? Groceries, space, ego. Let them have their pride. I have peace. And peace, I've learned, is the most valuable thing on earth. It's worth more than any house or any bank account. Do I regret helping them in the past? No, that was who I was. But I will never let who I was be used against who I have become. I gave them love. I gave them support. I gave them chances. And when they told me I was too expensive to feed, I gave them distance. The best gift I ever gave myself. Sometimes the best thing you can do is to walk away. Walking away isn't about giving up. It's about choosing yourself. It's about setting boundaries and showing others that your peace is worth more than their comfort. In the end, what you give yourself is the most important love of all.